What's up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School, the show where I teach podcasters how to love their podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. This is a very special podcast audit episode. I've got my new pod pal, Brittany from the Curd is the Word podcast. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. So first things first, I did not realize how many cheese podcasts there are. There's a lot out there. That was really surprising to me, but good thing it is I put the word cheese into the Apple Podcast search bar, and your show was image number 2 on my screen. So it's right there. So our SEO is working well. So we're off to a great start. Okay.
That's awesome. I actually haven't done that in a bit myself, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I think, obviously cheese isn't in the name of the show, but you've got it all over everything else. So that obviously, like your host description is really, really good. Episode titles are great. So I think that really that helps with all that. All right. That being said, let's set a goal for today. All right. Because we can go a few different directions, but I want to go where you want to go. So let's say 6 months from now, we're having a conversation like this. Things have gone really, really well over the last 6 months. Paint that picture for me. What would going really well for 6 months look like for you?
Absolutely. The one thing I want to start out with is the consistency in the episodes, whether that is, every week would be maybe not within the next 6 months, but maybe the next year or so. However, in the next 6 months, maybe they're coming out on the 15th and the 30th, or at least in every other Friday kind of schedule. And for me on the back end, also too, to be able to do more than one at once and kind of start to bank episodes and create that backlog. So when life does come up and get in the way, as it tends to, I'm not worried. I've already got, and it's so much more than just the episode, is what I'm learning on this
Yeah.
is, it's the blog post on the website, it's creating the marketing materials to put on Instagram, Facebook, and thankfully I've got templates to do all that. However, I do have to sit down and do it. It's not just like the
Right.
episode is out, my editor, sends it back to me. I add my own sound effects because it's easier the way we work together, which is
Yeah.
fine. So even though I upload it to Buzzsprout, publish it, there's still much more work that goes involved into it. So back to your question, at that 6 month mark, let's say I know it's going to come out on every other Friday. That Thursday or Wednesday, I know I'm like, okay, let's do the graphics today. Let's schedule those social posts. As much as I can automate, I want to.
Okay.
And it's, gaining the listenership. I'm already starting slowly to get people who are like, we'd love to send you our cheese to taste. And that
Uh-huh.
was a goal of mine. So I don't have to just like keep going out and buying it, which I obviously love to do. But to have people be like, okay, can you try this? Can you try that? Or listeners being like, "Oh, I'm at the grocery store. Can you do an episode on this?" So just more interacting with listeners as well.
Okay. Well, I love your train of thought here. I can tell, at least it seems to me, that you are starting to kind of make that trip from hobby mode into business mode, which I
Yeah.
like. As a lot of us do. When we get started, we're like, I like cheese. I'm going to talk about cheese on the show. And that's like, you know what? I think this thing could actually pay for itself. And you know what? I also should never pay for cheese ever again, which I agree with. And then like kind of see where it goes from there. Let's talk about consistency first. I feel like we can definitely knock that out. And I think one thing that we could do that may help right away is try to figure out what we can pare back that you are currently doing that may not be as important or necessary, because I was exactly like you. All right. When I first started my health podcast with 0 listeners, 0 social media, 0 email, no experience, I was spending so much time on unnecessary things. I would record the episode, do like a million social media marketing things, blog post, just all this stuff. And it was still like zeros across the board. Like nobody was doing anything. So I would put weekly content as priority and then kind of whittle things out of the way and then re-add them back in as you get more efficient with your new flow, new workflow. So one thing, I mean, how's the blog doing right now? That would be my first thing I'd look at and be like, if we're not really getting any traction on this, I would put that on pause first. So give me an update on the blog situation.
Yeah, when I say blog, it's actually just a page of my website where it
Okay.
links to the podcast, and then each blog page is actually just about that episode, and I'm copying
Okay.
and pasting descriptions
Okay.
left and right.
Okay.
However, I am putting in links as to, like, where to buy the cheese, who I've talked about, what events I've talked about, how you can buy tickets to it. I'm on the fence about the events at this point because I
Okay.
think, the issue with my consistency or whatever's going on with my consistency right now, I do all this research for events and I go to record and I'm like, "Well, these 3 already passed."
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
that I'm kind of, and also too, again, podcasting, I mean, I have listeners in Germany.
Yeah.
Do they really care that, like, I'm teaching a cheese board class in Summit, New Jersey? Probably not, you know?
Okay. Okay. So let's just put it this way. I would keep your radar wide open on what can I get rid of right now that's keeping me from releasing an episode every week. So just kind of just do maybe it might be worth it to just make a list. Like when you produce your next episode, just list all the stuff that you do that's affiliated with that, and then go, okay, what if I did one less social media asset, or my blog took me half the time? What would that look like? And just try to find minutes in different little pockets, and we can always add back in. That's the good thing. Because right now, when we're just getting started, like I had 0 Instagram followers and I was worried about posting 12 times a day on Instagram. And I'm like, I had to just pump my brakes and go, what in the hell am I doing here? Like, I've got nobody following me. I'm speaking to no one. Why am I worried about speaking to no one? But I had traction with the podcast. So that's goal number one. Whittle down the potentially unnecessary or not as important tasks and just kind of do an audit of that. And maybe find some stuff there, maybe you don't. The next level of this is how can we get really efficient with some batch recording stuff that we can get ahead? Because ideally for you, I want you good to go weekly. I want you actually 2 weeks past. Like if whatever you got this week, I want 2 more weeks locked and loaded, already good to go, like edited, in your host, scheduled, and then you got a buffer. That's when you become dangerous because now we can look ahead and be like, all right, what events are coming up? I can talk about that now, schedule it, all that stuff instead of in the moment. Is that making sense so far?
Absolutely. That's actually something I would love to work
Okay.
on.
Okay. So I think looking at like little micro episode content, like how long is a typical episode right now?
About 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you to figure out a 10-minute episode. So
Okay.
a format that we could do, um, this could be like with cheese and there's like tasting, like a taste of whatever. And it's a 10-minute taste episode. You know what I'm saying? Like something where this could be lead into brand partnerships and people are sending you their cheese. And it's like, all right, here's my breakdown of this cheese for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And those are your fill in the gap episodes. And you can record all
Oh.
kinds of those. And it's a double purpose because you're kind of featuring them on the show and you're doing a review, you're getting free cheese, but down the road, hey, I'm doing a big giveaway and would love to add you to our cheese bag giveaway of the month or whatever. And that helps you build your email list. And then down the road, hey, I'm doing an event. I would love to have you send in some of your cheese for samples or have you sponsor our event or sponsor my show. And like your content is really, it leans into partnerships, affiliations, free stuff, and sponsors because, that's just, you're not selling coaching on cheese. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm the cheese coach out here and I'll teach you how to make cheese. Like, that's not what you're doing.
No,
Um,
no.
yeah. Although you could if you wanted to, but so how are you feeling about all those ideas right there before I kind of go deeper into that?
I actually really like that, and I'm also thinking too, I tend to participate in cool cheese outings or, like, events and things, and I feel like I could easily, like, over the weekend, I was at a cheese cave in New York City with doing a tour, and, like, I know it's, we're all friends now, so it's easy for me to coordinate, but I could easily have a 10-minute episode and be like, "My experience at the cheese cave
Yes.
over the weekend," and that's an episode, or,
Yes.
I went to this cheese shop in wherever. Here's my experience. Here's what I bought. That's an episode. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. I like that a
And
lot.
well, and it feeds in like my whole mantra around this show is love it like a hobby, build it like a business. And this whole cheese thing is an awesome, I can tell you're like passionate about it and you love it, but it's also very, you're walking that path towards building a business around it. So these experiences, you reach out to the cheese cave, and if there's like a price of admission, you don't pay for any of this at
Right.
all. Like never ever again. Events, no thank you. Your media, you get in for free. Like your backstage pass to CheeseCon or whatever you go, like you're interviewing all the big cheese people. And like you don't pay for any of this stuff. You're getting access and you're getting free stuff. That's the brand positioning that we're going to take here. So, and maybe one of these events is, you know, travel time. So you're getting paid. They're flying you out to do this. Like that's the level I want you thinking at. Like you're not paying a dime for any of this stuff. You're coming out to cover the event,
Right.
and celebrity guest Brittany Bissett in the house. So, but you can go and do these. You could even, call ahead and go, I'm going to do a breakdown of what you're doing here on my show. Kurt is the word. Would love to get some social media video clips and get some phone, maybe a little, you do a 1 minute interview with face to camera with your phone with the owner or something, and just ask him a few questions, and just these are all your easy social media assets. Don't worry about all this AI stuff. And it's just like face to camera, face to camera. What do you think about your experience with the cheese cave or whatever, this event? And just grabbing stuff like that, easy stuff that always plays better on Instagram anyway, like that sort of
Right.
thing, instead of these custom made things that we spend so much time on, templates and everything. So I like all of that. And those are our 10-minute, people send you cheese, 10-minute little taste of whatever. It could be little breakdowns of companies. Like maybe you do a spotlight on a family owned business or something like that once per month. Get your listeners, go, hey, if you have a family owned cheese business, send me your info, and let's do a 10-minute. These could be 10-minute interviews, like let's just do
Yeah.
a quick 10-minute, or you have them send you audio, like use the speak pipe link, what I do, have them answer 5 questions on there, and then you just break up those questions and add your little commentary in between. Or it doesn't have to be 5 questions, it could be 2 questions, like what makes your family business special, what do you love most about being in the cheese industry, and they answer those 2 things, and you kind of add some commentary in between. You don't even have to do a live interview, it's just them recording it. So thoughts? I'll pause. I'll pump my brakes.
No, I think this is, I'm like taking notes as you're talking here. In terms of that though, it's like family owned, women owned,
Mm,
BIPOC owned. There's so many,
yes.
and I know of so many off the top of my head. One of my last episodes was this tiny little family farm that makes cheap, great cheese and no one really knows about it, but that's how they want to be. And if you
Hmm.
truly want to try it, you seek it out. That kind of, so I feel like I'm already doing so many of the things you're saying, and yet I'm lumping them all into one, and it's taking a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And break those up into micro episodes, micro content for your social media, and just make it easy. I love the
Yeah.
question that Tim Ferriss asks, what would this look like if it were easy? And like I have to constantly ask myself this question. When I feel frustrated, I'm like, it's taking so long. I go, what would this look like if it were easy? And I start getting rid of stuff. I start simplifying. So another one of my favorite quotes, Dan Sullivan, simplify before you multiply. I'm like, okay, how can we just break this down and make it simple? ELF, easy, lucrative, fun. How do we do that? And I think you can do it. Like you've got a lot of cool, it seems like you got a lot of cool connections in this space. And then down the road, you've built all these, affiliate relationships, and you've got all these connections with homegrown, mom and pop cheese businesses. And like you could go on a tour. You could, and that's a sponsored thing. I've got a client right now that is buying like this van thing. He's going to wrap it and do like a tour going around to different. He's in the private club space, and he's going to go and do like a podcast tour, and it's all sponsored and paid for, and the whole van and everything. So like you
That's
could do
awesome.
events, CheeseCon by Brittany Bissett. Like I don't know if that's a thing already, but you need to make it happen. Um, but just being the hub of all the excitement, because I know how people get about cheese. Like I said, I've been to KetoCon, I've been in the keto space for a while, and people are like, the main food groups of keto are coffee, bacon, brisket, and cheese. Like that's it. Don't take away one of those food groups, or they really get crappy about it. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff that you could do to really turn this into a business that you just love, to be around your tribe all the time. So, yeah, I think that I would lean into that pretty hard. And then we go, okay, I think, okay, so we've got your homework of we need to figure out what we can kind of whittle down that's taking time on social media, podcast production, things like that. And then look at this side and go, what are all the ideas that we've got here that could be potential 10-minute episodes? Then we go, okay, let's take some action on this. What's the low hanging fruit? Is it you go to a place and do a review? Or maybe you've got a handful of people that have been reaching out to you to try their cheese. You start saying yes, send it out. Let's do an episode. This Speak Pipe that I'm talking about is just a website. I use it to gather testimonials from my clients and listener feedback, but it's a free website. And you set up speakpipe.com/Kurt is the word, and all free. And you just send them this link and go talk on this for 5 minutes and answer this, and this about your cheese or company or whatever you want from them. And then that's your episode. Then you can kind of intro it and outro it or whatever. So those could be little spotlight sessions or whatever. Listener questions, event recaps, all that stuff. And I would just batch. And all of a sudden you've got content coming out your ears.
No, I think I'm like already thinking like, okay, I'm going to put together like a template email with like questions for cheese shop owners. And I can already think of like 5 off the top of my head that I can easily just blast email them. Well, individualize it, make it look like I'm just emailing them.
Yeah.
And get all of that, locked and loaded, ready to go. And I think too, on the topic of what can I pare back? And this is a mistake that I made early on, and I'm slowly catching up with it. In order to when I launched my podcast, I thought I would have an event. I'm going to do something. This store took a chance on me. I hosted this like wine, cheese, build your own cheese and charcuterie board class.
Yeah.
And when I tell you it took off, it's kind of an understatement. And I've had multiple places just reaching out to me, please do a class here. Please do a class here. And I thought, that's so great. This is how I'm going to get my name out this time. Okay. Women who like, or any member, men too, who like to fold salami roses are not really interested in listening to my stories behind artisanal cheese. And I thought, well, this is how I word of mouth, whatever. And I have pulled back on the class front a decent bit. And now I'm also trying to do classes that fit me. So I'm doing a beer and cheese tasting coming up, which is a lot more for people who are interested in food versus just catering or entertaining. And to that point, because the podcast itself, I haven't been batching, as we know. The podcast itself doesn't really have a deadline. So for me, I'm like, oh, I have a class on Thursday. Let me prepare for that because I have to be ready by Thursday. Let me kick the podcast down another week because then something else comes up and I'm like, oh, that has a definitive date and time. Let me push the podcast back a little bit more. And I think that was just kind of consuming a lot of my energy. And now as my goal for 2024, we're getting this thing up and running. I want to be making money off the podcast itself, let alone all the free cheese I can't wait to eat. Doing less classes, turning people down. Maybe I'm quoting too high of a price and I'm just like, sorry, that it is what it is. Yeah. And now I'm starting to get into farmers markets and whatnot, which to me, if I could have my podcast, a farmers market on the weekend, come talk to me about the cheese that was on the podcast. That to me is like what I want to be doing versus just like, okay, here's how we arrange and play with our food.
Yeah. Okay. I've got ideas based off of what you just said. I've got like 12 more ideas that we need to get out here in the next like 7 minutes. Are you building an email list right now? Do you have anything
Yes.
Okay.
I've got about 100 people. Just whenever someone comes to my class, I immediately make them sign up.
Email. Okay. I would love some sort of a charcuterie board lead magnet. Like what if you had a simple video training? You know what I'm saying? A little charcuterie board boot camp. That could be a free challenge that you run. Okay. I mean, that could be something done over 3 days on a Facebook group that's behind an email wall, or maybe it's just a 3 video series. And you're like, I know exactly what you're talking about, those meat flour things. I love it. You know what I'm saying? Like I stole one at the last health event and I put it on my wrist like a corsage and I walked around. I've got pictures. I'm going to send you a picture of this. I'll prove to you that I'm not lying.
Please do. too.
I'm
That
not
is
lying.
hysterical.
So like that, I think would be a great lead magnet. If you're already saying your audience responds, like they're all about, and these locations are all about the charcuterie board thing. And so I would lean into that. That was idea number one, because building your email list, when you're in the brand affiliation, brand partnership, potentially looking at sponsor space, if you can get a good email list going, that's a huge asset. You can charge way more for everything, because then sponsors come knocking. Not only do they get an ad on your show, they get a little run on social media, and they get access to maybe a custom email blast. And if you've got 10,000 people on there, we charge a lot more. So
Right, right.
that's a nice brand asset that I would start looking at doing. So I think priority one, weekly episodes. Priority two, I would get some sort of lead magnet going, just so that way you can communicate with people via email. And it's very important. I get really preachy about building email lists to all my podcast, clients and all my pod pals that listen to the show. I'm like, you got to do this. It's very, very important for a lot of reasons. So I would look at that as maybe a secondary priority. I mean, there's just a lot that you could potentially do with this brand. Brittany, I see a lot of cool things. I think the other thing I wanted to get across is you seem like a creative person. You seem like you've got a lot of ideas in this space. Create the business that's like the business of your dreams. You know what I'm saying? Like, I assume right now that you've got something else that's paying the bills outside of cheese.
I
You know what I'm
do.
saying?
Yeah.
So you've got that. Bills are taken care of. But what if? What if you dreamed a dream and you were like, I could do this sort of a thing and earn a full-time income from it? And like, what would that look like? That's something that I did when I had my gym. I owned a gym, and I was like, I had my health podcast, and I kind of felt like I had two full-time jobs because that's the kind of effort I put in both. But I was very motivated. I was like, what if I can make this podcast thing work, I don't think I'm going to have to work very much. Like, once I get it established. And 8 years later, I'm the 3-day work week guy, and I make way more money what I'm doing now than I did with my gym, and having 35 employees and 500, all this mess that was like, I didn't want any of that. So I'll challenge you. I see the brand potential. I'm not going to push you in this direction for no reason. Like, I see the brand potential with what you're doing. Like, I would dream that up and be like, all right, what if, like you said, what if I could do an episode a week, and I have certain social media things in place, and my schedule looked like this, and I worked these days, and I was doing events and farmers, like, put that in place. Like, what would an ideal lifestyle schedule brand look like for you? And then just start putting one thing in place at a time. You go, okay, here's this component, here's that component. And then as the income flows, you can back down a little bit or whatever. And then eventually I think it could become a reality. So I just kind of want to put that out there in your ecosystem. And that way it's something to shoot for. Sound cool?
No, it's funny you say that because right now I just signed up with a commercial kitchen I got my true reseller's license. I'm selling cheese from my events. I leave little order cards, and I'm getting it at wholesale, and I'm selling it at retail
Cool.
value. I'm,
Cool.
the tickets to my events, I mean, they're not cheap, but they're not super expensive. I'm starting to actually be able to fund my little podcast with the money I'm making from the things. And to your point, one thing at a time. I've got the commercial kitchen, I got my license, I found the wholesaler. Like, I'm not going to just find a retail space and start paying rent and open a cheese shop that way. I'm not there yet. But to be able to have someone at one of my salami folding classes, I swear they're more fun than that. But to my point, flag me over and say, this blue cheese was so great, I want to buy a pound of it.
Yeah.
Here's my address. I've kind of factored in a little bit extra money because I'm delivering it. I've got labels made. I've got, I'm basically just a mobile cheese shop. However, I'm already noticing too that, like, my actual job, I'm like, some days I leave work to like go put together a cheese board to deliver it. And
Yeah.
I can see it starting to kind of infiltrate, and there will have to be a conversation at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, the money that the podcast has the potential to make, between the being able to sell the cheese at, events and markets, like, yeah, that would be my literal ultimate life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have a lot of fun with it. So quick recap. We got to get to consistent weekly episodes. building an email list will help everything. So really like dig in on that. And, if you need somebody to hold you accountable, just let me know. I'll
Thank you.
check in. Hey, how's that email list going there, Brittany?
Thank you.
Random emails start popping up. And then just putting together that dream business and just kind of slowly put things in place to build that out. And I definitely think that you can get there. Always think about partnerships, think about brand affiliates, brand immersion. You don't pay for events, you get samples. Like, you should never pay for one more drop of cheese that goes in your mouth ever again. Like, that should all be paid for. People should be lining up to have their cheese in your mouth to talk about on your show.
Yeah.
So, events, things like that. So position yourself as that brand expert, and then keep leaning into shining a spotlight on like small business owners, women-owned business, things like that. Like, I think that's gonna be super cool. I guess that would be the last point that I would finish up on, is once you start to get traction, which you are already in the cheese podcast space, I would challenge you to think about who your show is for. I think that's the next tier, the next defining aspect of your brand. Like, is it for a certain type of cheese enthusiast? Is it for moms? Is it for millennials? Is it for, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you could answer who it's for type of a question and really market that and brand that, and this is something that happens overnight. It could happen over time though. That's going to make you stand out. Like, what if you really wanted to just focus on like the stay-at-home mom market or something like that? Like, just like a total out of the blue example. And it's like, Kurt is the Word, the only cheese podcast for hot moms or something like that. And it's like, and it made you laugh, right? And like, oh, that
Right.
could be like, and then that kind of makes your ideal audience identify with it and go, oh, that's cool. Like, that sounds like it's for me. I'm a hot mom, and
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
So
Or like how
look
to
for that.
impress your in-laws with cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, look for that. I think that'll help, because the next step is, let's differentiate you from everybody else out there, and your personality and the events and all that stuff, shining a spotlight on, local businesses, family-owned businesses. I think that'll help you stand out, but you have to continually fight for your identity and who you want to represent in this space, if that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's shout out your brand. I want to give you the spotlight. So where do people go if they want to come check out your all things Kurt is the Word? Where do they go?
Yes,
Website, social, all the things.
yeah. So my website and socials are all the same. It's under The Bees Cheese, and that's B as in Brittany, S as in Swiss, either .com. You can at me on Instagram, Facebook, all the same. And my web podcast is called Kurt is the Word.
All right, y'all. Go and support Brittany. She's got a cool thing. I know everybody loves cheese. My son is 12. He's getting ready to turn 13. And he's weird with his cheese. He will not eat melted cheese. It grosses him out. Like, pizza, won't touch it, but he will eat a pound of cheese sticks. Like, he'll eat his body weight in cheese sticks. I'm like, dude, it's the same thing. It's in stick form. And he's like, Dad, the melted, it just grosses me out, man. I can't handle it. So
Yeah.
anyway, but everyone else other than my son loves cheese. Go and support Brittany's show and get the Kurt is the Word out there. All right. Pod pals, appreciate everybody listening in. If you want to do a podcast audit just like my pod pal Brittany, get signed up on the website www.podcastingbusiness.school. And with that, I'm going to send you all out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.